Hi, everyone. I'm Rabbi Greg, and here we are once again for Torah Saturday. This week's Torah portion Shoftim has a lot of good stuff, a lot of really famous Shoftim is kind of regulations or rules, and there's a lot of good ones in this passage. And so I think you may be surprised at what I chose to focus on given that, but it will lead us to someplace very interesting, I promise. So let's start with the blessing for Torah study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Um, Blessed are you, Divine One, who gives us this opportunity to soak in and to learn and to absorb the words of Torah. Okay, so let me share with you the source sheet if you want to peek ahead, which I have right here. And I will put it, if you're watching the recording, I will put it in the chat. What happened? Why isn't it sharing? I know what I did. I brought up the share link, but I didn't copy the share link, so this should work better. Okay, so there is the share link. And now I will share my page. Okay, so we're going to talk about witnesses. So there is, oh, good, Neil. I delayed as long as I could. I pretended that I was fumbling to share a link, but actually I was just delaying things so you could return.
Thanks. Okay.
So, uh, at a few points during this, they've said various uh, transgressions are punishable by death. And in each time they talk about witnesses. So may I have a volunteer to read these first two verses about witnesses?
A person shall be put to death only on the testimony of two or more witnesses. No one shall be put to death on the testimony of a single witness. A single witness may not validate against another party any guilt or blame for any offense that may be committed. A case can only be valid a case can be valid only on the testimony of two witnesses or more.
Okay. So I think the message is pretty straightforward here. You need to have two witnesses and can't have a single witness. Um, Comments.
Well, what does this mean? A witness may not validate against another party.
Um,
So is that saying you can't say, oh, this person's reliable, but you should believe him? Is that what?
I think it's just like, right, this person is accused of murder.
It,
A bunch of people arrived, and there's
Yes.
somebody there holding a knife and a dead body that was stabbed. And there's one other person saying, yes, I
I
saw
saw.
them stab them. So that's validating the guilt. And the
right.
person holding the knife says, no, no, I just arrived and the knife was in the body and I was so shocked I pulled it out. And
Yeah. I get it now. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought we were still in a case with two people. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, this was a chapter later. Hi, Annie, welcome.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
I know you got to put a quarter in the jar.
No, it's Jewish Standard Time, Annie.
I was on a walk and I lost track of time.
Wow. Well,
Yes,
I'm so glad you're feeling well enough to go on a walk. And
yes.
are absorbed in that. So we're talking about this idea of witnesses. Okay. Why would the Torah include this
There were
amongst its
probably
rule?
there were probably plenty of cases where one person had a grudge with another person and might just uh, declare, you know, I saw them do something really bad just to get even. And it's with an interpersonal conflict of one on one, it's real easy for stuff to get blown out of proportion or distorted with more than one viewpoint. Then you start seeing whether there's consistency and whether there's differences in the interpretation of what happened.
Yeah,
Also putting someone to death is really serious. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
You can't take that one back. Once it's
right,
happened.
right. And I believe um, this first one is talking about death, and the second one kind of opens it up a little more. Cannot validate guilt for any offense that may be committed. A case is valid only on the testimony of two witnesses. So they've kind of generalized this point a little more. And it's like, yes, death is the penalty for some things, but even if you give somebody lashes, which was another kind of common thing, or they get thrown out of camp for a week, those are still a big deal. And so they seem to have, they're putting a bar for justice here.
Yes.
And even if the single witness is somebody rich or from a good family, this is trying to set a bar. Um, One of the things early on is says you also can't do bribery. So they're trying to set up, um, a system of justice. Um, okay, so let's go a little bit further. Could somebody read a little bit further? And they'd say, okay, and then if there's a case, you bring it to the magistrate, and then it says in 1918.
If one who testified is a false witness,
Wait,
and
no,
then
just
my and
back
then
up to
my screen what?
if you could back up to the start of it begins with.
Okay, you said that part, so that was why I skipped ahead. And the
Oh,
magistrates shall make a thorough investigation. If the one who testified is a false witness, having testified falsely against a fellow Israelite,
um, I think
and
it got rid of the next sentence, but I think it basically says if
I'll
the
go
false
find it.
witness gets the penalty that would have been
And you shall do to the one as the one schemed to do to the other. Thus you will sweep out evil from your midst.
right. So big penalty for perjury. So you have these magistrates, they're supposed to investigate, they're supposed to really make sure that these witnesses, are telling the truth. Okay. So one of the things that I like to do, and I always just do it out of more out of habit, I will always look at Targum, which was the translation into Aramaic. It was done because the people didn't speak Hebrew anymore, even 2,500 years ago, even 2,000 years ago, but Aramaic was the language that they spoke and read. So these block letters that we use for Hebrew are actually the Aramaic block alphabet, which was adopted for Hebrew. So Aramaic was kind of a big deal. And so could someone read the Aramaic translation of 1918?
And the judges shall question the witnesses of their times fairly, and behold, false testimony is in the mouth of a witness. They have borne false witness against their brother.
Okay. So, what do you notice about any differences you notice about the Aramaic translation and the Hebrew translation that we're looking at?
Um, so the magistrates shall make a thorough investigation, and then the judges shall question the witness in their times fairly. Thorough and fair aren't necessarily the same thing.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a little bit of a almost a clarification. It's thorough and it's also it needs to be fairly. Like how do you see the difference between the two?
Yeah, well, it starts to feel like there's been centuries of learning going on here in terms of the
Mhm.
behavior of people and what it means to have a system of justice, not just to have a set of rules, but to apply those rules to real human beings in real situations.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So it could be an evolution of kind of the thinking and understanding of human nature. Absolutely. What do you make of this testified falsely against a fellow Israelite or testified falsely against their brother?
It makes me wonder, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. Like what words are available in Aramaic versus Hebrew.
Hmm.
So if maybe that's the closest approximation.
Hmm.
Um,
Yes, maybe there was the word for Israelite, or maybe it was some kind of gloss.
or maybe they had choices and they just picked one for a specific, like the you shall not suffer a witch to live, but the word for witch in Greek is the same thing as the one for pharmacist and poisoner,
Hmm.
kind of like that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's look at this word in Aramaic. Ba'ahuhon. So ach is brother in Hebrew. It's also here. Um, who that's often there was a shift in vowels. So in Aramaic, things were ooze, which became az. And then a N at the end isn't all that unusual in Aramaic. Okay,
Mm.
so let's look at the Hebrew word. Be'ahav. Be'ahav, it's also brother. The V at the end, that's his brother. So
So the English translation is maybe less accurate.
that's
Mhm.
right. So let's just take a look. Deuteronomy 19:18. We can look at the translations. 2023, fellow Israelite. JPS 2006, fellow Israelite. Everett Fox, his brother. Corin Jerusalem, his brother. Methuselah, his brother. The Kohat. Okay, this is cut off, so we don't know what that word would have been. JPS against his fellow. Um, JPS 1917, his brother. Um, so what's going on here?
I'm wondering, I'm starting to see some parallels in what's going on in our justice system today when when something is done against a citizen versus against a foreigner versus against a visitor. And it feels like we're doing this little squirm and dance around who has rights and who is protected, and are there classes of people that get more protections than other people?
That's right. That's right. I like to say that, my Hebrew vocabulary isn't that good, but I can sometimes smell a rat in the translation. And I will say that I missed this one. But I think, in my opinion, what we're seeing is an agenda by the translator, by JPS. I mean, maybe it's based on American politics. Maybe it's based on Israel, where Israeli Arabs, Israeli Palestinians who are citizens have the same rights under the law, but in de facto, that's not always the case. And certainly, we see right now a horrible situation in the West Bank where these settlers are terrorizing and rampaging and conducting pogroms against Palestinian villages, and they're not being held accountable. If they're arrested, they're released. And so, the difference between a fellow Israelite and your brother could be universalized much more easily than a fellow Israelite. So this started around 2000, 2006, maybe even as early as 1985 with the Jewish Publication Society, because the wording here is very clear. It's brother. Your fellow, I actually like if you want to make it a gender neutral term, but Israelite is a strong interpretation away from the fidelity to the text. So as I say, this one I missed, but I saw it when I read the Targum, and I thought I was like, oh, the Targum must be off. And then I looked at the Aramaic, and I was like, oh wow, this is correct. So whoever translated this was doing a better job than the translation of JPS. I still like it best as my default translation, but I try to be careful and check it.
Do you mean the JPS 2006 is your default?
The 2020.
2020. Okay, because this one, when I click on it, it goes to the 2006. So I was just wondering.
Yeah, it might be. I think it's 2020. I kind of go back and forth.
Okay,
But the 1917 doesn't
just
have
curious.
is much more close to the Hebrew, but it gets anachronistic. It gets a little King Jamesy for me. So it's,
Hmm.
you know, but it's really important. The translation is every translation is an interpretation. And so we have to be mindful of that. And the nice thing about Safari is you can do what I just did. You click on it, you can click on any word and look, even if you don't, as long as you know enough Hebrew to know which word is which. But sometimes I don't even know, and I'll say, okay, it's the first part of the sentence. I know what this word is. I don't know these three, and I'll just start clicking on them and see which one is right.
And I did click on the word to see the translation, and it has like five different choices. So one is brother of same parents, one is half brother, one the third one is relative, kinship, or same tribe.
Okay.
So perhaps it has been used somewhere else in the Torah to refer to the same tribe. That's sort of the um, I'm saying the most generous interpretation of this translation is that they based it on somewhere where it's less ambiguously referring to the same tribe in the Torah. And
Yeah,
that's
and
certainly translators do is they look for where the word has been used elsewhere.
it is justifiable. It is justifiable. So everything that I've said is my interpretation. So
Yes.
it is not a fabrication, but it is an interpretation that I disagree with.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you pointing that
Yeah.
out. It's
Yeah, and
very
thank you, Allison, for taking a look at the word. Okay, so let's go back to this idea where we were talking about a thorough or fair investigation. So what does Rashi have to say about that?
Um, and the judges shall diligently inquire concerning the statement of those who assert them, the first witnesses, to be plotting witnesses, and that they investigate and cross-examine those who assert them to be plotting witnesses by diligent inquiry and scrutiny. And I read a little bit ahead. Um,
Okay.
and he circles back to that concept of you shall do to him as he intended to have done unto his brother,
Hmm.
as he intended to do, but not as he has done. Hence, the rabbis state that if the false witnesses have already killed, if by their evidence the defendant was already executed, the false witnesses are not put to death.
Hmm.
If it's okay to go off course just a tiny bit there, I thought that was interesting.
Oh, it is. Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So, what does he mean by plotting witnesses? I think it's kind of implied, and you kind of clarified it a bit more, but let's make sure we're all on the same page here.
That they intentionally lied.
Yeah, yeah, they put their heads together and they said, okay, you say this and I'll say that, and we will put the finger on Rabbi Greg and get him out of here with his, anti-Israel
He
interpretation.
took more cookies than he should have from the table, something to that effect.
Well, we do know he likes cookies.
That is believable. Those are the best lies, the ones that have a grain of truth in them. So, um, right. And so then, okay, there's these plotting witnesses, and then it seems like some other people come along and say, wait, wait, wait. Neil and Allison are just out to get Rabbi Greg. They're not, I saw them whispering and overheard them say that they were going to make this up. So, I think elsewhere it says that you need to have two witnesses to the plotting witnesses being plotting witnesses. So, you know, uh,
Heavy
this-
burden of proof.
yeah, yeah. So, okay. So everybody kind of gets scrutinized if they come forward.
And we would definitely plot together.
Yeah,
Whereas,
I was
which
going to say they have more opportunity than me and Diane. So
This is true.
which really does, to me, it begs the question: back when the stuff was written, would a husband and wife be considered two separate witnesses or just as a single witness? And I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know.
I'm going to guess that based on the times in the Torah where a husband or wife can actually testify against each other, that they're separate.
I think it
I'm
should
guessing.
be it should be based on the situation. I mean, there could be a situation where let's go against the stereotype where the husband is clearly under the control of the wife and will
Mhm.
always do what she says. So, and there are other cases where the husband and wife are both very independent people, and maybe, as Annie said, testifying against each other.
Yes.
Well, not even necessarily against each other, just
Yeah, they
Different.
come forward
I have a
together
question
and
though.
accuse someone.
Does anybody know if during these trials, if when the witness was being questioned, if the other witnesses were in the room or if they cleared them out? Does anyone happen to know? Because that
There's
could
a
change what kind of testimony you give.
there's a huge amount of detail in the Talmud, which we're actually going to look at a piece of that in a little while. But one of the tractates is Sanhedrin, which Sanhedrin was the court of judges, and they talk about how it was put together and where people sat, and the rabbis argued. And I haven't studied it in enough depth to know if they covered, can women testify at all? Are there limits if the woman and her husband both testifies that one or two witnesses? These are the kind of things that they really get into, but I don't know the answers to those. So it's an interesting question.
I Googled
And I
it,
will say in the Talmud, if they say that women couldn't testify, that may not be true for the time 1,000 years earlier when the Torah was written, because we
or
know
depending on what country they were in, like maybe they did it differently in Babylon or Iran.
absolutely.
Torah.org says the Torah does not explicitly prohibit women from testifying, but Mishnah and Talmudic rulings effectively limit their role in certain types of court cases.
Hmm.
They can't serve as witnesses in civil or criminal trials that require them to appear in court and be subject to cross-examination. Yeah, I imagine that would rule out a lot of things.
Yeah.
Sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt.
No, it's a good question. And there's a lot of evidence that women could do things in the society that the Torah claimed they couldn't do. So the Torah had an agenda of erasing the roles of women.
Yeah.
Um, so let's come back to, okay, so we've gotten this, we've opened the door to this. Judges will question the witnesses, and you're cross-examining. Rashi's gone from kind of questioning to cross-examining. Now, what is Rabbeinu Bahya? What is his take?
And the judges shall investigate thoroughly by means of the second set of witnesses who claim that the first witnesses could not have witnessed what they say they did. They employ the means of investigation we have described in detail in 1315, and it emerges that the original witnesses were liars. They were both lying.
Yeah. So interesting aside, sheker, which we see here and in the Torah, sheker means false or falsehood. The letters of sheker, shin kuf resh, they're all right next to each other in the alphabet. Emet, truth, aleph mem taf, is the first letter, the last letter, and the middle letter. So it says that truth stands on three, it's like a three-pointed stool. But sheker, falsehood, has no legs because there's just a single point which can easily be toppled.
Which is interesting because the shape of the word is like there's only one leg.
Yeah, yeah. Um, okay, so now let's get into kind of what the Mishnah, which was um, written down in 200 CE. That was when there were a lot of oral laws, a lot of things here and there. It was after the Bar Kokhba rebellion, and so many of the Jewish scholars were killed, and so much of this information was lost that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said we need to write it down. The Talmud was completed, the Babylonian Talmud was completed in 600 CE. And so we'll look at some examples from each on how this went. So this is a long passage, so we're going to go chunk by chunk. So would someone like to read? Could someone please read this first chunk?
I can go. Here is how they investigated and admonished witnesses in capital cases. They brought them in and admonished them, saying, perhaps he will say something that is only a supposition or hearsay or second hand, or even from a trustworthy man. Or perhaps you do not know that we shall check you with examination and inquiry.
Okay. So this is kind of our Law and Order moment, or Sam Waterston is starting to, but there's not a prosecutor. These are the judges. And so what's your impression? Like, what's the kind of tone of these questions?
It feels like you're starting to get a little more into a presumption of innocence until you prove somebody guilty rather than the other way around.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And they're kind of making the witness sweat a little bit.
And
Okay.
I read ahead a little bit too, and they're talking about how important it is in capital cases. So if
Hmm.
someone is actually going to lose their life, then you need to be really careful.
Right. Are you sure you saw this, or did your neighbor tell you? Your neighbor's a reliable person. Well, let's get them in there, or did you really see this? Okay.
Or are you making it up?
Are you
It's
making?
also It's also, I've been in jury duty, and even sitting in uh, to be selected, the judge will give some instructions. Uh,
Hmm.
that's the most recent times I've been in. I wasn't selected, but the judge gave some instructions about what's going on and,
Hmm.
how you need to think about answering. So they're talking about that too. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Allison, you want to read this next paragraph?
yes. No, moreover, that capital cases are not like non capital cases. In non capital cases, a man may pay money and so make atonement. But in capital cases, the witness is answerable for the blood of him that is wrongly condemned and the blood of his descendants that should have been born to him, too, at the end of the world.
Okay. So all these judges are rabbis. What are they talking about here?
He who takes a life has taken the, how does that quote go?
Yeah, again, something about you've 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 taken something out of the world, basically.
Yeah. So
Yeah. It's like not only this person you've killed, but all of their future children, grandchildren, and on through infinity. All of those are lost. So again, this is still witness comes in. I'm just going to testify. First, you're getting, you sure you saw this? Then you're getting, you realize the implications of what you're saying here, but they're not done.
For
And
so we have found it with Cain that murdered his brother. For it says, the bloods of your brother cry out. It doesn't say the blood of your brother, but rather the bloods of your brother, meaning his blood and the blood of his descendants. Therefore, but a single person was created in the world.
okay, so the italics, that's my question. So who was the single person?
So is that Abel? I mean,
Hmm.
Abel is the brother.
yes.
Hmm.
So he's a single person instead of the whole line that he could have created.
Hmm.
That's a good thought, but I think that's not the answer that the rabbi was looking for. If we think back to the creation story, where all animals were created at once, were all humans created at once.
So is he talking about Adam?
Yeah, it's talking about the
Okay.
Adam. There's just a single person that was created in the world. So again, this witness is sitting up here, and now you're getting the history lesson. We're all descended from a single person. Okay,
We're descended because um, there was also Eve.
that is true. That
And then
is
depending on which creation story you go with, there was also Lilith created at the same time as Adam.
Or
okay.
perhaps the second time after creating the hermaphrodite.
I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm just saying.
Well, yeah, the creation story, I give you all high marks for knowing your Torah and your Mishnah and creation story, but this person, these small group of people, everyone descended from them. And so this paragraph continues.
But if you say just Adam, then you're missing because Adam alone is not the only person we're descended from.
Very true.
Adam alone doesn't carry all the genetics that were
Well, and he can't
required.
really accomplish much by himself as far as procreation
Exactly.
goes.
I mean,
Very
you've got to
true.
bring in Eve. You got to bring in Eve. Without
Yep.
Yes.
her, there's nothing. Just one
very
lonesome guy all by himself.
all by
Can't do anything.
himself and
And
great
maybe
guy with
little,
unspeakable acts, to um but yeah, I mean, I think what you're highlighting is the sort of sexism of the rabbis in the Mishnah, where women were just overlooked. That was just assumed.
You're just a rib.
yeah. And,
Yeah.
and I think there were I don't know if this was the Jewish doctor's view, but there was a view that the woman was just a
Vessel.
vessel, and that all the um, it was
They
just
didn't understand the genetics,
right,
obviously.
right. That the I mean,
Um,
it's pretty obvious if you look that sometimes the children look a whole lot more like the mother than like the father. So how they could stop that only the man produced the
Well,
offspring
look at who
is
was writing it down. It's
well, yeah,
real straightforward.
and I mean, zooming forward through time, my great grandfather was a Jewish doctor, and his attitude was that, to be honest, he didn't think much of humans. He was a famous surgeon, and everybody wanted him to work on them, but he didn't really think men or women had more value than each other, and he didn't seem to think either had much at all.
Hmm.
So I'm guessing the Jewish doctor view just depends on which Jewish doctor you're talking about.
And in time, but I will say there is in some of the Haredi communities, women's most important job is to be the vessel for creating children.
Mhm.
And part of the reason why they're starting to pay attention to spousal abuse and men who beat women is they could harm their child rearing ability, as disgusting as that whole picture is. So unfortunately, it's not at all gone from the world.
The ironic thing, I don't know if anybody else remembers this, is in 2002, scientists realized they could take human cells and use them to fertilize a female egg.
Yeah.
So they realized that you technically don't even need sperm anymore if you wanted to go that far. I was in college and I was living with five guys at the time, and they all kind of panicked. Like that suddenly they were obsolete. And I was like, well, this just means you actually have to be good people if you want to be in a relationship. So the vessel thing is interesting to me because at this point, we need the eggs, we need women. We don't have human incubators, right? But
You know,
technically, we don't need the sperm. So it's just interesting when you're talking about modern day Haredi's going, well, here we go, the human incubator. This is great. Yeah.
So one thought before I lose it that kind of leads us back into our discussion is whether it was one person or two from whom we're all descended, that person, the first person, the first people created were created in the divine image. So I want to kind of put a thumbtack into that and hold on to it. That if you eliminate a human, you're eliminating something that was divinely inspired and created.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And for these early people, the primordial couple from whom we're all descended, um,
I've
so
always
if we take that to the end of its logic, we get this next sentence here.
which
What we're
is
talking
right,
about.
which is what I was trying to
Me
remember.
too.
So yeah,
So
so
could
I
you
can
read it
read
for
it
us, please?
to teach that if any person has caused a single life to perish, they are deemed by the scripture as if they have caused a whole world to perish. And anyone who saves a single soul is deemed by scripture as if they have saved a whole world.
So modern, the amazing Rabbi Yitz Greenberg, he sort of translates this into humanistic terms as the infinite value of human life. Here we are talking about witnesses and grilling them and putting them on the hot seat, and suddenly out springs one of the most universal principles of human life stated in as powerful a way as you possibly can. Um, so suddenly, here we are, this just sort of pops out of this conversation. And as it goes on, um, when they talk about like the creation of Adam, the commentator was, we're all descended from the same people, so no one could say my father is greater than your father. Um, or this thing about the heretics. Um, so here it gets really interesting. They're sort of saying other reasons why a single person was created, or we could call them a single couple was created. But this person was created to proclaim the greatness of the Holy Blessed One. For humans stamp many coins with one seal, and they are like one another. But the King of Kings, the Holy Blessed One, has stamped every human with the seal of the first man, and yet not one of them are like one another. So, what's that image? What is that saying? It's a little poetic. It may be unclear to some of us. What's this mean?
So I'll start with one possibility, and of course there are many, many. Uh, that we tend to think of God or the divine as kind of this single entity. And to me, there's a message here that there's infinite variability that we can't even comprehend within the divine, and that expresses itself through all the diversity of all the humans that came from that creation.
Love that. Yeah, so the diversity of human creation is a reflection of the diversity of the divine as the divine exists.
I'm thinking of the Gene Roddenberry Star Trek quote of infinite diversity and infinite combinations.
Hmm. Yeah. And what is this whole coin thing? What's that talking about?
Well, there's a metaphor when you mint coins, you have a die, you have a basically like a mold, and then you take a big hammer and you whack a piece of metal with that mold, and they all come out looking pretty much alike because they all
Hmm.
came from the same source. And there's the only variability is if you whack it too hard, it might crack a little bit, or it might spread out a little more. But the image, the face, or the imagery on that coin is identical, and they're saying that humanity is sort of the antithesis of that. That we don't all have the same nose and the same toes and everything in between.
Or the same
The
mind.
the
But we do have,
interesting thing to me, sorry, go ahead.
you just was going to say there is something we all have in common as well. But go ahead, Annie.
I was gonna say the interesting thing to me is when this was written, coins did not all look alike, even if they were made from the same mold, because the molds, you would get this overflow. If you look at coins from this period, they have different edges and they're not all quite the same size. And you would have been able to say, no, that was the coin I had this morning. That guy picked it from my pocket,
Hmm.
Yep,
as opposed to just some
that's
other
fair.
quarter. So I thought it was kind of interesting they were going with the coin metaphor on that. I'm guessing they did that because that was something that was actually mass produced at the time when most things
Hmm.
weren't.
Completely agree.
Um,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it could also be, we're seeing what's in bold is what's actually in the Talmud, and
No,
kings
no,
have.
the bold is I was added by me. So
Oh,
that
oh,
is
oh,
sometimes
okay.
the case,
But
but here
but
I
I
bolded for emphasis.
but I agree with where you're going, Allison, of like it's being stamped like not with the seal of Caesar, but with the seal of the divine. And
Mhm.
yeah. And then, you're probably talking to a lot of people who don't have any money. So being compared to something of that is designed to inherently be valuable, that can mean something.
And it's something everyone would have seen. Everyone would have seen some kind of coin, you
Right.
know.
Yeah, good point.
known, or here's the coins with Caesar, this Caesar or that Caesar or this ruler. Um, and then it concludes, therefore everyone must say, for my sake was the world created. So what's the connection there? For my sake was the world created.
To me, there's a hint by that's a pretty heavy burden, and we all have responsibilities. If the world was created for my sake, I have responsibility to others in that world. It's not I'm not the only person in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, backing up, we were created, a single person was created to proclaim the greatness of the Holy Blessed One. So
Hmm.
the world was created so we could proclaim the greatness of the Holy One, or something. You know,
We're
I
not
haven't
just here of
quite combined them
we're not
together.
just here of circumstance. There was a guiding force behind that.
Yes. And if we think back to the creation story, at one point God said to the Adam, "All right, you till the earth. You got this whole garden here. All of this is for you." And so, if we are sort of part of that, and we have a whole, each of us are the Adam, then the world was created for each of us as well. There's a great teaching by Rabbi Simcha Bunim, who would carry two notes in his pocket. One would say, "For my sake was the world created," and the other said, "I am but dust and ashes." And if he got too arrogant, he would read the "I am dust and ashes." And if he got very low, he would say, "For my sake was the world created." So that's very big in Musar circles, and it's somewhat known outside of it. So again, that is coming from this teaching, sort of our place in the universe, the infinite value of all life, and the value of our own life as well. Our own.
That reminds me of a Serbian proverb of be noble, for you are made of stars. Be humble, for you are made of earth.
Mm, love that. Okay, so all of this is again my note. The judge has laid this whole thing on each witness, and then let's finish this section off.
And if perhaps you witnesses would say, why should we be involved with this trouble? Was it not said, he being a witness, whether he has seen or known, if he does not speak it, then he shall bear his iniquity. Leviticus 5:1. And if perhaps you witnesses would say, why should we be guilty of the blood of this man? Was it not said, when the wicked perish, there is rejoicing? Proverbs 11:10.
Okay, so what are they saying? How does he kind of close out the inquiry to the witnesses?
It's kind of a harsh rebuke. When the wicked perish, there is rejoicing. Like,
Yes,
you better be telling the truth or we're going to have a party. Well,
But also don't neglect your responsibility to try to help us figure out what
Yeah,
happened.
yeah. Being silent has consequences.
yeah, yeah, you might be responsible for this person's death, but if they really did it, you know, they need to face the music. Okay. So this was all from the Mishnah, 2000 CE. Um, there's this Sanhedrin goes into a little bit. So this is again 600 CE is when it was written down and closed. Sanhedrin is the tractate that talks about all this law and justice stuff. So they bring in another principle. So could someone read this?
The Mishnah discusses an adultery case where others warned her and the witnesses themselves did not warn her. As we learned in a Mishnah, Rabbi Yosef says, a defendant is never executed unless the mouths of his two witnesses are those who warn him as it is stated, at the mouth of the two witnesses, or at the mouth of three witnesses, shall he that is to die be put to death, from Deuteronomy. The verse's emphasis is on the phrase at the mouth of, teaches that the witnesses must issue the warning themselves.
So this is what Allison was talking about earlier, where the black is the literal translation of the Hebrew, and then these explanatory words are kind of interpolated. And because the Talmud reader at the time would have kind of just known what was implied and picked up. So what are they warning her about? It's an adultery case. What do they mean giving her a warning? So adultery is a woman who's married, having sex with someone who's not her husband.
Sort of
I'm
isn't.
wondering, are they supposed to warn her, I know you need to stop, or I'm worried this is about to happen, or I'm going to report you, or I'm supposed to show up in court?
Or even warn her that this is a bad thing to do.
That's, I think, what
Yeah.
you pointed out, Allison, is what jumps out for me. That, you know, just kind of being there as an observer and then reporting it after the fact misses a point if this is a moral code of justice or behavior. That if you're just going to go say she shouldn't have done that, that's that you leave behind something about why didn't you intervene before things got really bad?
So you think this ties into the nation of Israel being responsible for each other?
Yes.
Okay.
And women got married very well. Men and women got married very young, and women may not have even known all the rules of society yet.
And at this point in
Girls.
time, a lot of people died before they were like 35. So yeah.
Yeah, so make sure you teach her that now that you're married, you should stay faithful.
Yeah, so you see her walking arm in arm with somebody towards, looking very cozy. It's like, hey, Judith, if you have sex with them, you could be executed. So just, and they're saying if someone didn't do that, and that person had to be the witness who then said, oh, yeah, and then I walked by and I saw them, having sex, um, they wouldn't be executed. And so part of the rabbi, I think everything you've said is really good. And also part of the rabbi's project is they basically legislate the death penalty out of existence, where they just keep putting more and more conditions for execution. So in the Torah, it's two witnesses, person's gone. Then you got to really grill the witness and almost intimidate them, is where we are at 200 CE. And by the time we're at 600 CE, all of a sudden, um, it's like you need to have like these witnesses.
I really enjoy that because at this point in world history, most religions went out of their way to find more reasons to execute people, to try to curb behavior. And the rabbis are like, yeah, we can't take it back. Let's try to make this really difficult to get to that point.
Yeah, yeah. And
It's very humane.
this is Roman Empire times too. Romans were
Mhm.
crucifying and executing people left and right.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is sort of taking a stand against that. So we're almost done. So just kind of another place in the Mishnah, okay, ask some very specific questions about what day, whatever. And uh oh, this is a duplicate. Okay, and so then here's one. This is just a little bit juicy and salacious, so I'm being transparent. Um, with regard to one who engages in intercourse with a forbidden relative, how would they have acted to spare the accused from execution? So again, they're like trying to find reasons not to execute people.
Oh
So
God, that
Baya and
sentence
Rava,
coming
we
out.
both have asked, did you see the intercourse like a brush entering into a tube? So since
Diane
the
left.
so, sorry for the heteronormative example, but that's the only one they would have given at the time. Um, uh, okay, so
So you just saw a back and a front. That's not enough. You
that's
have to
not
go.
enough. You need to kind of really,
A brush?
there used to be
I'm
little
sitting here
tubes
right.
of
Oh,
makeup and brushes that were used to applicate as applicators for eye makeup. So
Ah, yeah, I used one of those this morning. Yep.
yeah, yeah. So even in the fifth century and sixth century, women were using cosmetics in that way. Presumably women, maybe men too.
yes, men too.
Yeah,
Yes.
Not among Jews, but in Egypt, almost everyone wore eyeliner.
yeah. And I think these days men's cosmetics is the fastest growing,
It's
section of
marketed.
the cosmetics industry.
Yeah.
All right, my friends. Well, that is it for this Torah Tuesday. If you have been watching the video this far, thank you so much. Please give us a like and a share, follow the channel, turn on notifications, and come by rabbigregmarcus.com and sign up for the email list so you can participate. Until next time, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
Shabbat shalom.
shalom.